Good evening if you're watching live, and welcome to episode 170 of the About the Cards podcast. Live tonight on YouTube, as always, with host Stefan Loeffler at Junk Wax Twins.
Oh, hi.
Myself, Ben Wilson, at Our Trading Cards. We are a podcast by collectors for collectors, and we hope to bring you a smart and insightful podcast discussing trading card collecting. We are live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific.
10 Central.
On YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitch. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at About the Cards. We are available as a podcast everywhere you can find a pod. Check out our website, aboutthecards.wordpress.com, and get ready for some awesome financial and economics talk. We have guest host Jeff Soxie, also known as the Keston Kira apologist. How are you, Jeff?
Doing well, Ben. Yeah, as Stefan said, it's 10 o'clock in the Central. So, again, the Brewers finally broke the card streak, so life is good.
Yes, hate the Cardinals. Maybe not as much as you guys, but I definitely not a fan of them since they stole, still haven't got over the McGuire trade,
Yeah.
I just like it knowing that this is whack. Yo, this is whack.
Yo.
Yeah, there was a... Wait a minute, Steph. You got a haircut.
I did.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Looking clean, man. Looking clean.
That's our first haircut since what? The show started?
June of last year.
Wow.
Take. May have been May, but yep.
Yeah, just like an aunt at a family reunion.
It's on.
Your cheeks. Oh, look at him.
It's on.
Mm-hmm.
Ants are little tiny bugs that Angela's allergic to.
Mm-hmm.
It's ant.
It's on.
It's ant.
You're both wrong.
Ant.
No, it's ant.
You There's going to be a lot of you're wrong on tonight's show, I believe. So, Jeff, tell us a little bit about your background and your card collecting story.
Sure. So, I, much like most of the demo, started my life as a junk wax collector. Shout out to Randy's Cards in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. Remember, I was pretty much hooked on the hobby when I pulled a T206 random nobody out of a mystery pack when I was in 5th grade, and that pretty much, cemented the bug. That plus the fact that growing up in Wisconsin, if you weren't a Packers fan, you were loving the mid 80s and early 90s Brewers who, had Robin Yount, lost Paul Molitor, and had, a rotating cavalcade of people who would become the next great Chicago Cub pitcher.
Nobody told me we were going to have a dirty Scone on.
So, got away from the hobby for quite a few years, really focused more on collecting, quite frankly, game-worn jerseys and autograph balls, stuff like that. But, mostly through my professional training, I'm an economist. And more specifically, I've been a labor economist for about the last 17 years. So, very familiar with all the ebbs and flows of consumer markets and in various dynamics. And so for the last 3 years, I've run a research center at the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh. And, one of the things that we do is we build projections and models for companies on products, do customer discovery work. And, really just focus on this question of, well, what can we take from all this big data that's coming out and apply it to, better business strategies. So I, much like, again, a lot of people that I see popping up on Twitter, started collecting cards again, as a pandemic-related hobby. And, really have, over the course of the summer, been, pleased to note that I'm now, to some extent, a recovering hobbyist, mainly because of the fact that, again, a lot of the changes that I've seen in the industry are changes that anyone who had been looking at the industry for the last 30 years would have anticipated. But, it's just gotten to the point where, with the retail environment, if I can't source product, I'm not collecting product. So, now I'm to the point where, again, I'm just, looking at the hobby and looking at the industry more from the perspective of in a more objective observer that's really interested in, again, trying to figure out the question of why we've gone from a mass market consumer industry to one that has a lot of the same dynamics of luxury goods. And the answer to that is, well, because speculation is rampant in both.
You know what? Anybody who's got any type of an economics background, a financial background that runs any type of analytics, I mean, if you can just really take the last couple of years and perhaps the next few years leading up until the Fanatics transition, takeover, however you want to look at it, this 10-year dynamic from 2017 to 2027 will absolutely be phenomenal, to the point where if you're an economics student and you want to write a thesis on any number of topics within an industry, I mean, pick your poison. There's going to be just amazing. And for instance, seeing this right-sided trajectory we've now seen for 5 years. I mean, is there a comparable source that we could look to in any point in the U.S. economic structure and say, hey, there's always this downside, there's always this fall, and it'll be interesting to see when it happens, and maybe the whole Fanatics v Topps and Panini ultimately is, but that's still a few years away, which is going to lead to a lot more economic growth within the industry. But I think where a lot of people miss it is once we leave this room and we go out into the quote unquote real world, that's it. I mean, the economics are dependent upon just us here all agreeing, which is a microcosm of economics to begin with.
Right. I mean, you and I both know fairly well, Ben, that no growth curve always points up and to the right.
Not forever and ever. For a while.
Exactly. And I think that's what a lot of people who have gotten into the hobby over the course, especially the last 3 years, assume, because they look at the examples of the price escalations that we're seeing in certain, again, segments of the market that are really defined by scarcity. And, with the publishers now leaning into that scarcity and speculation, where, back in, when we started collecting, we know, for example, that there was one definitive card that was every player's rookie card, because there was only one release that came out for that sport per year. So if you had that card and it was the first year card of that player, that was their rookie. But now, of course, because of the fragmentation of the marketplace, there are some cards that retain value that are, again, cards released during a player's first year, and other cards that, hold next to no value because, again, of the fragmentation of the market. Now, are all examples, so, if you think about, I had a student try and count up the number of discrete releases of Luis Robert rookie cards last year, and I think we got to like 38, and that's not even color variations or what have you. But is the Topps Gallery Luis Robert more valuable than the Series 2, or is the Series 2 more valuable than the update? Or there's so much confusion in pricing markets because no one can there is no consensus about what is the definitive, what is the true. And so as a consequence, again, we're just left to our own speculation, because again, it's as anyone who has had experience reselling anything on eBay will tell you, is that the price of a good is really only determined by what someone else is willing to pay for it. And that's basically what we're seeing in the card market right now.
Well, and I despise that explanation of supply and demand when it boils down to worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. And it's like, yeah, but there's so many variables that are independent to you versus me versus Steph versus the next person that it really muddles that argument.
Right.
But in the hobby, it does work a lot more so than in the open free market, where there's market caps. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, there's always the outlier of I'm dying of thirst and I'm extremely dehydrated, so I would pay you everything I own for a drink of water. Where if we all just go to the grocery store or the convenience store tomorrow, $1.89 for the Dasani, but they couldn't probably get $2.89 for it, right?
Mhm.
So where's that happy medium? At some point, I can't push it any further than this because the market's not going to bear that.
Right.
And we are because it's a hobby, it's a non-necessity. It's
sure, and it's also the difference between the fact that again, microeconomics 101 dictates that your supply and demand curves are based on the aggregation of thousands or millions of individual transactions. Where if I'm a seller on COMC or Sportlots or pick whatever platform you want to use, and I'm looking for sales data on a card and I only see 3 recent transactions, then I can average the price of those transactions, but that's really not the definition of a market.
right.
So, again, it's niche arbitrage where, again, the only way you're going to have an established market for any of these players or any of these cards is that you just have to have enough sales volume, and that can only accrue over time. To the point where, again, the speculation curve on a lot of these cards is your typical speculation curve where it spikes and then it flatlines. And it's only because of the fact that, again, we know that, again, to be a purely economic transaction, it has to be rational to some extent, and that requires better information. So, if I'm the only seller of a card in the market, I can set my price because I have no other signals in which to base that presumption on. And that's pretty much what we're seeing right now.
Now, investing is always a very hot topic on About the Cards, as well as my Twitter timeline. As you well know,
Yes,
we've had plenty of
indeed.
private conversations. You and I share a lot of commonalities, both educationally and professionally. With your background as an economist, what are your thoughts and position on trading cards as "quote unquote" investments and this hobby as an investment vehicle?
It's just a word, Ben.
It is a word. It is a word. It's a trigger word. It's a word that has multiple meanings. It's a word that, anything can be considered an investment if it has the perception of generating value on the basis of no tangible economic activity, right? So if the only thing that determines an asset's value is a function of time, then, to some extent, it can be considered an investment. Although, again, that function of time also assumes that there is some underlying performance of that asset, or there is some underlying economic activity that then provides and increases the value of that asset. So if I'm assuming, for example, that I have a stock portfolio in a mutual fund, and 85% of those companies increase their profitability over the course of the 10 years that I hold that fund, then that fund should be generating a return. But, again, without the perception of value within the marketplace, frankly, in 1986, Fleer Michael Jordan is only worth as much as the paper in which it was printed, adjusting for inflation, back in 1986. But again, the perceived value of that card is based again off of the same esteem that collectors of Michael Jordan or Mickey Mantle in 1951 have of both the player as well as the card itself as a collectible. So is that a definition of an investment? No. Both because of the fact, again, that the asset, there is no underlying financial growth or financial accrual to the asset in hand. And second, again, the other wonderful thing about most investments is that you can realize return on those investments independent of actually divesting yourself of the asset. So if I have if I have a mutual fund, for example, or if I have a stock, those stocks pay dividends. I can collect those dividends without actually selling the stock and I retain the asset, but I again generate those returns. The only way that I can realize appreciation on the value of a card is by selling the card. I can then collect, again, the incremental value of that card, but I can only do that assuming, again, that the value of that card is going to appreciate over time, or in some cases, at least remain constant on the basis, from the basis of when I acquired it in the first place. So, and again, the other thing that we fail to recognize in this whole conversation about collectibles as investments is the fact, again, that when you think about most of the assets that we're talking about, or what people are snatching up because of their investment potential, are assets that have really only been in the market for the last 30 years. There are people that are buying vintage cards, and there are people now that are trying to buy, excellently graded examples of vintage cards, where again, the longest lifespan of, a widely collected baseball card, with the exception of the T206 Honest Wagner, is about 70 years now. Topps has been around for 70, so we'll just use that as a benchmark. That is a far different market than the market for an impressionist painter, where the painting itself and the artists themselves have been around for 150 to 200 years. And it's also the time horizon of the perception of that market that then, again, validates whether it's considered an investment or not. Because, if I'm thinking about the idea of buying a card and then selling it 3 years later, that's not an investment. That's an arbitrage activity. Just because I'm holding a card for that long doesn't necessarily mean that I've had enough time with that asset to realize the returns of that asset, nor has the market validated that asset as investable. So, can I see some future where cards may be considered investment vehicles, assets, in the same way as other types of artwork? Sure, but I don't think the market is either designed to accommodate that, nor is the industry mature enough to even accept what that would mean for it.
Right. I think where a lot of people, and this is my opinion, you're welcome to disagree. I think where a lot of people confuse the two is because the assumption is anything you can make money off of, therefore, is defined as an investment. And, a lot of it is nothing more than speculation. I'm buying today with the idea that, we can look to something that, consumables and whatnot. I mean, toilet paper is a perfect example, and hand sanitizer, things where the market shifted for a very unique and possibly a variable that we'll never see again.
Mm-hmm.
And people were buying it with the idea that, you're not investing in toilet paper. You're speculating that if I buy this pack of toilet paper for $10, when people get desperate, they're going to give me 20 or 30, and I can cash out and profit. And by definition, investment becomes a very tricky word, because the layman's definition there is if you can make money, it's an investment. And and I've talked to Paul Lesko about this, because I've used the word frivolous multiple times, and he's like, God, I hate when you use that word because you sound so uneducated with it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I use frivolous the way other people use investment. It's a word that if I say, Jeff, there's a frivolous lawsuit going on against my company, you're going to be like, oh yeah, okay, I get what frivolous means. Paul might look at it and go, Ben, that is not what a frivolous lawsuit is. And again, it's the academic, the educated definition thereof.
Right.
What,
yeah. It's the difference of terminology in the language of a bar certified or attorney, in the same way that investment as a term means far different, to someone who has their Series 7 and 9 and et cetera from the SEC.
Now,
so like when you think about the venture capital space, right? One of the things that's often thrown about is the concept of an accredited investor. And a accredited investor per SEC terms has to have a net worth of at least $1 million and has at least $10,000 in liquid capital to invest within a company. That means that for the most of us, we can't actually tap into that marketplace, even though we want to. That's where, again, equity markets exist, and so if you think about the way that even the concept of investment and investor are defined within financial markets, the way those terminologies are applied by professionals really means that, again, it's I wouldn't say it's irresponsible. It's just naive to apply them, in this context. And, so Stefan raised a point about, card comps and the value of signals and information.
That's from chat. DR.
Yep.
Yeah. So real quick, Jeff.
Yeah.
We were going over what the show might look like, and you're are we going to be able to interact with the chat? And I was, hey, I'll throw out all of the questions I have for you. If these are ones that you and I can talk about, these are ones that we would create to keep a conversation flowing. But hey, if anybody in the chat has something, and DR has a great one, can you explain the economic value of a card comp that is multiple weeks old versus the daily exchange of stocks and bonds?
Well, I mean, in both instances, there is a certain degree of speculation that occurs, right? Everyone went through the drama of the game stonks, saga from this winter, and everyone knows how much, speculation fed that, devoid of the underlying economics. But we know, again, that within the daily transactions for any kind of NASDAQ or Dow listed stock, you're talking about price data that's the aggregation of signals of at least thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of daily transactions, right? Your average stock is traded on the floor at least 10,000 times per day because of the high volume transactions that occur, across mutual funds and large institutional investors. Even your penny stocks that are, again, the subject of speculation by day traders may have a daily transaction volume of 5,000, 10,000 transactions, because people are buying, selling those stocks, trying to get those small valuation increments, many of which they're actually causing by the transactions that they're doing. Right. So if a stock is sold, then someone else in the market's going to say, well, that's a value, so I'm going to buy it now. Where the issue of card comps is, again, the fact that there isn't an established market to really base that signal or the basis for that price. You may be able to find, and you see this all the time, especially when new releases come out, is you see a flood of cards into the marketplace, whether it's eBay or COMC, from that release, and you see wide divergence in the values for those cards. Because no one knows how much they're worth. They're trying to be the first in the market to establish that value. Right. But for a lot of the cards that are, sold, on Twitter or everywhere else, again, because of the variety and the specialization of the market, and grading has made this even more complex because of, your population values. If you're one of 5 cards in the marketplace at a price right now, again, you can't set your price on the basis of the market because the market is too small to accurately value.
Right.
So, a comp that's weeks old, maybe the only comp that you have. Does that mean it's good information? It's hard to say. I mean, I wouldn't base any kind of valuation of an asset based off of a single comp, just like I know that, no good home appraiser would do the same. And
no,
so
in fact,
that, Ben.
No, in fact, when my house got appraised for a refi back in February, the appraiser came out and he's like, "What happened to the house three houses down across the street?" And I'm like, "Their roof blew up. There was a fire, and He's like, because it sold for about 40% less than all of the market comps of the houses. He goes, I'm gonna have to throw that one out.
Right.
But there was a variable I had
Mm-hmm.
that he didn't have
Mm-hmm.
as to why he's looking at the data, raw data,
Mhm.
saying, let's just say 400, 385, 410, 412, and he's got one for 287.
Right.
And he's looking at the square footage, et cetera, going, what the hell happened?
Right.
Okay, well, whoever bought it didn't have a roof on the house.
Mhm.
That's not what your data suggests. And, to a couple things of your point was, I recently bought the Finest Flashbacks Maguire.
Sure.
I tend to overpay with the short prints because I just want to get one and get out.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And I paid $35 for the Maguire. I paid $25 for the Henderson, so an average of $30, $60. Cool.
Yep.
I got them both. And right now, if you go to eBay, you'll find 3 or 4 of the Maguires at $25 each.
Okay.
So typically with comps, the thing is I'm not paying more than $35 because that's the most somebody paid for it. I'll pay $34. I'll pay $33, but I'm not paying $36 unless the market dries up and then desperation kicks in. And once in a while, there are extenuating variables. You got to put together a team set, player collector. You're chasing the color.
Yeah.
But those again are independent to you, and the market doesn't know why that outlier took place.
Right.
And again, the difference with the exchange of stocks and bonds, well, stocks are attached to companies with real assets and IP and brand, et cetera, and employees. And, a company could be cash flow insolvent and still have a street valuation of $3 billion. It's like, how does that work? Well, they're going to sell their trucks and they're going to sell their desks and they've got reams of paper laying around and, the IP. I mean, think about Topps and their IP, what that is worth. If you sold their catalog of all of their brands and et cetera, Fanatics comes in to buy it, you're buying 70 years worth of history. You're not just buying the rights to make 2026 flagships. So it's a great question by DR, and I'm sure we could talk for 2 hours on that subject.
Well, and it's interesting because it goes back to a comment, and I can't remember who tweeted this, but I saw it tonight about, someone was asking about assets to hold. And someone had mentioned, well, hold on to your boxes of 2021 Bowman because they're full of 17-year-olds with promise. Well, again, in that case, going back to your question, the notion of underlying fundamentals of the stock, if I'm, looking to acquire and paying, tens or hundreds of dollars for a card of someone who, is just recently signed out of the Dominican, probably will not be in the major leagues for 5 years, if at all. How am I going to view that as an investment unless I can actually, given the uncertainty of most prospects and speculation over the prospects in the game, again, the fundamentals in the markets are so vastly different that it's hard to even use the terminology interchangeably.
No, the best time to sell a speculative asset like Jason Dominguez is when he's a 16-year-old stud with bulky arms and he's being labeled as the next Babe Ruth and he's the next Yankee center fielder, right fielder. That's the best time because we absolutely have no idea what he is, who he is, what he will become.
Right.
Now when he's 19, 20, and you pull that card, first off, he was 4 years ago's news. He's not today's news. We have so many more prospects to speculate on. To hold a product like that to me is I mean, sure, there's always the chance that a Mike Trout, if you had held on to 2011 update sealed, but that doesn't mean that there's one in there.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's different.
More
if you
than likely.
Yeah. I mean, if you got a jumbo, right, Steph? I mean,
sure.
Yeah, if you got a jumbo, but I mean, it's been interesting to watch Eric Jabs, in his quest every Tuesday. He's opening 2019 product looking for Tatis and Vladdy. And, he's opening product and he's running across more dud blasters because, again, the pop rates on, the number of those cards that were printed, it's coming down. So,
yeah.
you can
And how
continue-
that
Oh, go ahead.
no, how that guy ends up selling 18-cent junk wax error cards for $10. There's lunacy around that guy. That guy is so I know, we got a couple more questions I want to cover before we get into the show.
Yeah.
I know you're working on a research, some research analytics on compiling prospects and prospect speculation. Do you want to give us a brief overview on what that analytics looks like?
Yeah, so this is a project that I really started last spring, and I was out on Twitter looking for old copies of Beckett, and it was really only to look at, again, rookie card pricing and compare the value of rookie cards against those players' baseball reference, records. So basically, again, a price to performance type of model, which would make sense for most financial assets because, again, it's this idea that as a player continues to perform well, then the value of the asset related to that player and the most valuable asset of that player is normally their rookie card. That should continue to increase as that player's performance does. And what you find within, again, some of the pricing data that I was able to obtain is that a lot of that basic model, the fundamentals of that model hold true for about 85% of rookies who had their debuts between the years of 1988 and 99 was the last year I tracked under that model. But the model itself begins to fall apart in 2004, 2005. And the reason why it does is because of the emergence of eBay as a market, an arbitrage platform, right? So the question again is now becomes not necessarily whether a player is performing well or whether a player has performed well. The market has shifted to an expectation of whether a player will perform well. And again, it's based on either comparisons with, similarly profiled players. A lot of it is speculation based on draft position. In the case of Dominican prospects, it's based on, or international prospects, it's their signing bonus. It really is. It's about, this perception of value that the player has been placed upon them by the teams that acquire them, rather than their potential to actually produce a career that would generate the same type of support for a price to performance ratio of a traded asset.
Sure.
So say being a wide receiver, being drafted by Detroit versus say New England.
Exactly.
Unless your name is Mike Williams.
Right.
Well,
or the difference between being, drafted as a first-round quarterback as opposed to a third-round quarterback.
Sure.
You both may start at the same time, but since you're a first-round quarterback, you're going to have that cachet attached to you. And one of the other things that's driving prospect speculation now too, even with the emergence of a lot more information on prospect rankings and showcases, and we have more eyes on players, is that the speculative pricing that we're seeing drive a lot of player value is just a lack of information. It's the fact that here's a 17-year-old of the Dominican that has a cool name, and they're signed by a team that I like. Therefore, that player has value because I don't know anything other than this esteem or the support that I have with him. It's the Dominguez example, which has the same basic curves of the speculative market that people had for Brian Taylor back in 1991. Again, it's the same example of a high school pitcher, a lot of hype, very little information, drafted by the most popular team in the country at the time. In this case, you have, again, a 16-year-old that signed internationally. Again, largest signing of the signing year, again, by the most popular team in America. Does that mean that player holds value? Probably not. But again, those are the signals that the market has taken towards those prospects, and that's one of the things that we've then further looked at as we started, again, applying the same rigor of the model that we developed based on the historical Beckett data. Now what I have two students working on is looking at, to the extent that data is available and the information is really poor, daily eBay transactions along with pricing or self-signal pricing, as we're seeing across Twitter, especially in buy-sell trade listings. So you will find, again, you have all the aggregators that are out there doing their various BST threads, where you will, again, even in BST threads that are listed at the same time or the same day, you will see wide variation across sellers and pricings of the exact same card. Because, again, absence of price signals related to the performance of an asset or the underlying performance of the fundamentals of that asset, you're left to basically set your own price and see if the market will take it. So it's really, again, the fact that the market of buyers and sellers within the hobby have both become so disaggregated that there really is no way to establish a reasonable pricing model for most cards, quite frankly, outside of those that have a large volume, a large volume in print and a large volume traded. So, like, for example, I could tell you with some reliability what the market price is for a raw 19 update Tatis or a raw 2000 or a raw 2018 Series 2 Acuna, because there are enough of those sold that I can come to some reasonable assumptions. But as we start getting into the more exotic or variant cards, again, the pricing signals of that market start to dry up. And so as a consequence, again, we're now, seeing where you had fairly consistent price to performance of, especially all-stars and Hall of Famers through the 90s. Now you're seeing wide variations even based on performance of those same players, again, just because of the speculation or esteem that they have in the marketplace. So, it's an example, for example, why, for several months during, I was just looking at this today, it was, the example for why for several months earlier this spring, the market value of a Walker Buehler rookie card was more than a rookie card of Clayton Kershaw. Again, two pitchers for the same team, one of which objectively is a much better pitcher. But because the other example is a younger player with far more speculative value, the market signals towards that player. So again, it's not the question of whether a player is good. It's a question of, do we think that the player that we're chasing now will be better than the players that we know are good? It really is, again, speculation around the unknown versus anything that we can model with some kind of established value. And while I was thinking about, what this looks like, the only obvious parallel I can draw is looking at in Robert Case and Case and Schiller, are two economists that have studied and developed very sophisticated pricing models for housing markets. And one of the things that I know that was, very well studied after the 2007-2009 recession was how the Case-Shiller index could not explain what was happening in San Francisco real estate, especially in 2013, 2014. Because it was running counter-cyclical to the market, and it was in price inflation was not supported by underlying, fundamentals. What they failed to recognize again was the tech influx, and the extent to which companies went through IPOs, and you had tech pros that became billionaires, and what were they going to buy? They were going to buy things and pay inflated prices for them,
right?
Because there was just more money into the marketplace. And I think that's one of the things that you saw, especially in the hobby over the course of the last 2 years, is that there's now just more money in the marketplace. So, the inflation that's happened in the market is primarily driven by the fact that there are more people in the market some of us that have more disposable assets that we're willing to pay for things. Does that necessarily mean that is a signal of long-term economic value? Well, going back to Ben's point about toilet paper during the pandemic, probably not. But that it just goes to show that even when we had pricing model, when we developed a pricing model based on established market fundamentals, again, because of the fact that you had a publication like Beckett that had a book value, and you could track the change in that book value from month to month, but it was really the definitive signal by which every card shop based their pricing, because everyone looked at a price guide. And then the company then, by in turn, took the signals from those card shops and refined their pricing, accordingly. So it was a bidirectional information relationship. We don't have those same advantages today because there is no single voice that's saying, well, here is the market. And, so as a consequence, again, everyone can talk about all the wonderful players they collect that, again, the price of their rookie cards or the price of their cards is always undervalued. That doesn't necessarily mean that the player isn't good or you shouldn't collect them. It just means that the market doesn't find the same appeal in that player as they may in someone else that, again, because of the speculative nature of the market, may have half of the career.
And, to your point, as you were saying just a couple of moments ago about how there's an influx of money, an external money that alters, almost creates an artificial market. Right now, I live in the greater Sacramento area, and our housing market is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Why for? Well, okay. Well, we're about 90 minutes outside of San Francisco, the greater Bay Area. The housing market is so expensive there that you're having a lot of people take their cash money and come into the Sacramento market with it. A $400,000 house that goes on the market that might take 30, 60 days to sell. You're getting this influx of, I'll give you $500,000 cash right now.
Mm-hmm.
When our house was appraised, I needed it to come in at a certain number. It came in at 40% above that number, to the point where I looked at the appraiser and I said, shut up.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be serious with that price. And he's like, I swear to God, right now you put this thing on the market at what you think it should sell for, and you'll get a cash offer probably of $75,000 to $125,000 above the anticipated market. Why? Because Sacramento money says it's worth this.
Right.
San Francisco money says it's worth that.
Right.
And it's going to sell for San Francisco money. And that's a great parallel to this hobby where Ben, Steph, and Jeff money is X. But then you get these quote-unquote sneakerheads, this external money, these athletes now that are going to go in and pay stupid money. Why? Because they have it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll wear $50,000, diamond earrings on their ears. Do you think they really care about spending $5,000 on a Patrick Mahomes RPA when, the market may suggest it's only worth $2,000, $2,500?
Right.
What's $5,000 to them? And again, money is all relative. Cost is relative. When people say, what's it valued at? Value is relative. Depends on what you have, how much disposable income you have. My brother, I made more money than him. And he's like, why don't you have this? And, why don't you have a PS3 at the time? And I'm like, dude, I can't afford it right now. I'm a single dad. And I've got, a car that you don't have. I've got car insurance that you don't have. I've got child support that you don't have, et cetera, et cetera. And he's like, oh, yeah, I get it. It's like, just because I make more money doesn't mean I have more to spend. My liabilities, my outgoing perhaps is going to go up. A lot of it depends on, personal and independent variables. But that's where a lot of people miss the boat when it comes to comps in general. You just don't know when you see a raw number. All I got to say is this whole industry right now is a data analytics wet dream.
It is.
I mean, you could have so much fun with it. And I love the fact that you want to buy a card, so you just have a couple of your students comp it out for you as an assignment.
I don't they're not necessarily comping cards for me. They've started buying themselves. It's been interesting to see what they're interested in buying, though, because the two students that are working on this are both college athletes, and they're not at all interested in buying necessarily the hot players, because again, they know sneaker markets and they know how that game works, and they're drawing a lot of parallels between what they're seeing. Because what they're looking at right now in terms of price signaling is, like I said, they're getting aggregated eBay data. They're also looking at social media posts. They haven't gone into the depths of Facebook that you go, Ben. But they are looking at Instagram auctions and breakers and things like that. They're saying, you're seeing the same people in both, that are following both streams right now. One of one of my students was just laughing the other day about the fact that Fanatics had hired someone away from StockX to manage their trading card platform. He's like, yeah, get ready for 6 a.m. drops and cross collaborations with this streetwear brand or this streetwear brand. I mean, they joke about it, but it's what they can see coming because they've grown up in that marketplace. But who they collect are the players that they actually enjoy watching. And they also collect the players in which, again, if they're speculating on prospects, they're going to speculate on guys whose career paths most closely resemble their own, because it's a matter of wish fulfillment. They don't want to necessarily, find out or see someone who is better than them succeed. They want to see the underdog story. So, it's just the fact, for example, that I had a student, one of my students, acquired as many Hayden Cantrell cards as he could. And Hayden Cantrell is, he's the second round pick of the Brewers, or supplemental first rounder 2 years ago. Was playing in high A. And the only reason why he was buying Hayden's card is because he followed him on Instagram and he got a bunch of them autographed after our Timber Rattlers game. Well, he knows that he'll never sell the cards, but he knows that he has them in case he ever needs to sell them. But, again, that's how they're viewing the industry, is really, again, they're more interested in the story than they are the speculation. Yeah. And it's mostly because of the fact that if they think about things that they would like to collect, they're priced out of the market, right? They're not going to get into high-end basketball because they can't afford it. They have no idea what high-end baseball is because they've never seen it. Their idea of the value of an autograph isn't necessarily something that's considered top certified. They'd rather acquire it in person because that's what you do for autographs. So it's been really interesting to think about, again, how kids 20 years younger than I am, 25 years younger than I am, view the same hobby, and view the hobby really pretty much the same way that I did when I was their age. Which is, you collect what you enjoy. You don't collect something because the market tells you have to.
Sure. So we're going to get into the show here momentarily. Yeah. I do have two more for you. One, if we can just kind of do like a quick 90-second one, just an overview. And then I've got a personal question for you that we'd like to always ask all of our guests. Sure. What are your thoughts on the current distribution model in the hobby?
Well, I mean, what we're seeing in the distribution model right now is that MJ Holdings is basically manipulating the market. We know that retail has been constrained, and as a consequence, when you have a few regional retailers or wholesalers that actually distribute into the market, they can, tack on prices above stated retail. And they are. And I think, again, one of the things that we're seeing within the distribution model is the fact that in many instances, the volume constraints that a lot of mass market retailers put on the hobby has, certainly refined the question of who a collector is, because it's either an opportunist or a collector that will wake up at 4:00 in the morning and stand in line at Target for the possibility of getting a blaster of Bowman. But what I think you're seeing right now is, again, you were already moving towards more centralization of distribution with the decline in the local card shops in a lot of communities, where, again, the only place you could find product was either online or at a mass market retailer. With those mass market options coming off, well, then you're now going online, which is pointing product or pushing product closer and closer to the publisher, which I think was the model that initially attracted Fanatics in the first place. It's the fact that most people were buying their product either directly from Topps or Panini when they release products, or at a second, through a second-hand intermediary, a wholesaler like a Steel City or a David Adams or wherever, right? So you're going out and you're buying product as close to the publisher as you can. So Fanatics comes in and they can cut out the middleman, but again, it's still the same distribution model. Where now I have one place that I can get it, whereas now, or in the future I'll have one place to get it, where in the past I may have had maybe 5 places to get it reliably. So to me, I don't know what the distinction is.
It's almost like a mobster that goes around buying up all your debt and say, now you owe me.
Right.
Instead of buying from 5 different places. Maybe that's a loose analogy or poor one, but it'll definitely be interesting. I know we're going to get into this a little bit more here momentarily once we get into the show.
Yeah.
Before we head in to the show, we always ask all of our first-time guests and co-hosts, if you could only own one card, what would it be?
That's a good question, and that has changed wildly over the years. I would say if I could own one card right now, it would be a 1954 Hank Aaron. And that's both because of what the player has represented to the game, what he has represented to the city that I love, and the fact that he is, again, the most famous player to date connected with the only baseball world championship that Wisconsin has ever seen.
I figured you'd probably go with like a 1983 Raleigh Fingers, considering how you're dressed, but okay. Hey, each is their own. Hank Aaron's rookie card is a good one, I guess.
Or Ben, I could go with like a 2004 John Jaha, and we'd be in the same boat.
Kudos, Cracknell.
Yep.
I figured you're going to go with an 85 true rookie McGuire because that's just the way it goes.
Could do that, or unfortunately, Ben Sheets never had a card in an athletics uniform.
Yeah.
Or maybe
I thought he had one in update. Now I'm going to have to go look after the show.
Yeah, he may have had one in update.
But if he did, he didn't have very many.
Right. And that's one of the things that I'm, again, I have very few graded cards, and most of the graded cards that I have are Ben Sheets autographs from 2000.
I'm waiting for one of these days, a long-time listener to drop that the card that they would absolutely keep in a house fire, essentially, is the athletic dude that kind of looks like you. Drawing a blank on his name, not Hank Blaylock, but Kevin Mensch.
Yes.
Mensch, the upper deck.
Yep, the upper deck Mensch.
Good times, guys. All right, so let's get into it. Jeff, hey, thank you for joining us. I think you're going to plan on sticking around with us the rest of the show.
Absolutely.
And we'll definitely have to have you on again because, we barely scratched the surface on any economic-related stuff. And, of course, as things develop over the next couple of years, we'll definitely want your insight on a number of topics. So this just in, listener mail days and pulls. This week's feature, courtesy of Audio Deluxe 7 at J Gruen 78, spelled JGRUEN 78, picked up a 2011 Bowman Prospects auto of Bryce Harper, stating as he tagged us that this card is selling for, in his words, criminally low right now. And as Steph pulls up the visual, and this was when Harper had the really, he lifted the pen a lot during his auto, so you see a lot of, I don't know what you'd call that with the raising of the ink stuff.
That just lazy handwriting.
Yeah.
A lot of the early autos were kind of when he got down to the end of the B and the H.
Yeah.
I mean, I give him some credit. It's not like the was it DeAndre Ayton that just had a like pyramid signature.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
and there it is.
Yeah.
He at least tried to make it.
Harper got better keeping the pen on it over the years.
Sure.
I think the first year or two were kind of bad, but I don't know what he paid for this, but criminally low is definitely an interesting way to describe it. When Harper's a bona fide Hall of Fame candidate at the very least.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in the prime of his career, trying to drag the Phillies to the playoffs single-handedly. I mean, you want to talk about a MVP. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter recently over the last few days of Ohtani versus Guerrero, where Harper's over there literally got his whole team on a tarp and he's dragging the other 25 guys by himself. I mean, that's how it feels.
Yeah.
Matt said, or go ahead, Seth.
I've got one that falls in the same category, if I may interject.
Mm-hmm.
From somebody who was in chat earlier looking to break not tier 1 but gold label Bayside breakers. Andrew shot this my way. A quote unquote Donruss. Let's figure out where the camera is. Jersey Kings of my Vikings quarterback, Kirk Cousins. It's number 2, I believe. 25, 75. It's upside down. Sorry. I think it's 39/75, and there's almost a triple color. Looks like the yellow just got cut off, so maybe like his pant leg grate there. But fancy nice card, and I know he sent Ship something too. So y'all check his feed or ask him. I'm sure he'll show you. And thanks for the card, Andrew.
Yeah, and he'll be returning to the show, I believe, the first part of November, if I'm not mistaken. So, and Matt Major said in the chat that Ben Sheets had an A's card in both Update and Allen and Ginter.
Excellent.
So there were a couple, but not very many.
No.
11-3.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew.
So please feel free to share with About the Cards your recent awesome mail days or pulls. You can tag at About the Cards on Twitter with pictures or a video under 60 seconds, G-rated preferably. You can use the hashtag About the Cards Mail Day, and we'll do our best to feature your card or cards on an upcoming episode. The week that was last week's releases, we had Topps Living Week 185. Luis Garcia of the Astros sold 1,800 copies, 1,816. And Jameson Taillon of the Yankees sold 1,623. So, about average now for what we've seen. Kind of interesting. We've been, Matt and I have been trying to track, see if we can figure out how many Topps subs they got. We believe there's around 812 that will automatically sell every week. So anything above 812 would be what was bought the week of the release. Just based on preliminary numbers, Topps is posting, and then they adjust them later in the day. That happened last week and again this week. I don't have a confirmation from Matt that that's the exact amount, but right around that number, give or take.
Somewhere around 800 is a good guess. Gotcha.
Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. It's not information that is shared with us. So to be able to have Detective Matt on the case, like a good old Hardy boy, is pretty cool. So also last week, 2021 Bowman Chrome dropped last Wednesday with Bowman Chrome Light coming out on Friday. And then 2021 Pro Set Memories came out on Friday the 24th. Also online exclusive 2021 Topps Archives snapshots. Don't know exactly when it came out, but it came out. So if that's your thing, really nice imagery on that usually. But all the archive stuff is just not necessary. And our good buddy Nick Vosbrink, who again will be on the show in a couple of weeks, I think on October 20th. Big guy when it comes to printing. He's like, why the hate on this product? And it's like, it's not this product. It's another product.
Right.
That you open up your email like, great. Now this one too. Thanks, Topps. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it just reminds me of the threads that we're seeing recently around the Fanatics the Fanatics announcement of people asking, well, which which products do you want Fanatics to keep if they were to acquire Topps? And of course, no one ever says flagship.
Sure. No one should say archives either. And if you say archives, hop into our chat some night. So, and I know, Steph, we didn't mention this I don't have this on the show notes, but archive signature next year, 2022.
Is confirmed for January.
Huh?
So it's 2 products now coming out prior to flagship for the first time. Dumb. Come on. Hot off the presses, new releases. Topps Living Week 186 dropped today. Card 453, Patrick Wisdom, third baseman of the Cubs. And 454, Jonah Heim, catcher. Rookie card for the Texas Rangers. The prize of the Chris Davis trade in the offseason. And the Jonah Heim from show friend Jared Kelly. So he gave us a small pixelated preview before the drop. So that was fun. We appreciate Jared for that. We had a little bit of fun on Twitter with that if you got a chance to see and try to guess who it was. Also from Topps Living this week, Star Wars available through next Tuesday. Card 243, Crosshair from the new Star Wars Disney Plus show, The Bad Batch. And card 244, Corky Crazy from Star Wars The Clone Wars. I believe I pronounced that right.
Oh,
so
I'll have you know that it's pronounced Corey Koski.
Is that really how it's pronounced? Or are you just making because of the baseball player?
Ben.
Hey, you know what? It's late here on the West Coast.
Sir, please. Bye, Ben.
He's back.
You really need to get rid of that button, dude. we're gonna have a post-show intervention, taking that button off of your hands.
Somebody has to be the producer. No, I would assume that's Corky Crazy.
Crazy, yeah. Just an interesting week. It's a deep canon week for Star Wars fans. Not popular names by any measure, but if you're a fan of Star Wars, definitely probably. I haven't watched The Bad Batch. I don't know how it holds up to some of the other animated. Good things.
It's on my list.
Yeah.
So yeah, good week. Perhaps if you're on the old Twitter and you collect Star Wars Living, let me know what you think. I definitely like to get some insight from. I'm a Star Wars fan, but not a whole canon fan. So I haven't watched The Bad Batch yet, but good artwork. Probably good additions if you're collecting the Star Wars. My dad's collecting the whole set, so. Topps Sports Illustrated is coming to a close soon. It's available through next Tuesday, week 29 out of 35. Brought us card number 57, Roberto Clemente, of course, of the Pirates from 1967. And kind of an interesting one, card 58, Tim Lincecum of the Giants from 2010. Kind of a fun cover. And celebrating presumably his first World Series ring from 2010. So I'm assuming I didn't actually take a look at what the cover is, but good cards. I've picked up a few recently. They're nice stock if you collect Topps now. Sports Illustrated are right in line as far as the overall quality and production of that. And then Topps Throwback Thursday available through tomorrow morning. Set number 38, the second week of 1986-87 hockey. Card 112, Joey Votto. 113, Cal Ripken Jr. with the short print variation. And the aforementioned Bryce Harper is card 114. And I don't think we mentioned this last week. I had thought it, but I didn't verbalize it. I think they're trying to color coordinate the two-tone.
I think they are too.
With the team. Which was interesting because the Ichiro was green and yellow, so that one kind of threw me off. That's why I didn't mention it, because it didn't really make sense.
Right.
Votto has that blue color with the reds, but I think they're at least trying to do one dominant color from the team. And Matt brought up a point saying all 6 of this series, the 6-pack so far, they're all tipping their caps.
Oh, they are.
That they are.
We'll have to see if that holds true the next 2 weeks.
An additional online release anyway, and I know we don't cover this all too often because there are several other people who cover it far better than we do. but I'm gonna have to pick that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, DJ Ski's dropping tomorrow. Very nice Kirby Puckett.
Kirby Puckett with the Prince lettering,
Yep.
2 Kirby Puckets with the First Avenue, quote unquote, star of fame,
Yep.
where outside the venue they actually have the musicians and bands that have come through. In this case, having Kirby Puckett's number 34, of course, an umbrella and a guitar in nod to Prince as well. It's a nice card. I like it. Gonna have to get it.
Yeah.
Looks so much better than the Christian Yelich that I didn't buy.
DJ Ski's done really well. After Party, he's probably on a short list of new artist inclusions in 70 from Project 2020 that I mean, he did the Satchel Paige, I think his second or third card.
Yeah.
He's had some really nice stuff. And yesterday, I think it was Greg Simpkins, if I'm not mistaken. Matt's in the chat, he can correct me, but the Ernie Banks that came out with the bear cub hugging him, my word, that is a phenomenal card. That was great. I really enjoyed I don't remember which artist did the Mike Trout where it's a fish and the head of the trout is turning into the player Mike Trout. That was fun art, but the Ernie Banks was phenomenal. I'm pretty sure it was Simpkins. So that Puckett's really nice. The purple, obviously, with the whole Minnesota tie-in and Prince and everything is great. Chuck Stiles, I apologize. Maybe it was Simpkins that did the Trout or something, but Chuck Stiles did the Ernie Banks. So appreciate Matt for with the assist on that one. Hey, it was. That's why I called him out so that he had my back on that. Sure, he bought at least one of those, maybe more, trying to chase one of the gold foils or the foils or whatever they are. We're 600 cards into this, and we're just getting started. It feels like
in September.
So releasing this week, as far as major releases go, we have 2021 Panini Obsidian Basketball, which dropped today. And Bayside Breakers, Andrew in the chat said he was opening some. Coming at you at $574.95 a box, 1 pack, 7 cards. You should get 2 autos and then 2 inserts or parallels in a box for $575.
Rough.
Yeah, Obsidian's really nice though. I mean,
yeah.
When they did the baseball one in Chronicles a couple years ago, I'm like, I can't wait for a full scale Obsidian release. Who knows if we'll see it now with all the Fanatic stuff? You know, Panini. Panini's probably going to hit first, so I don't know what we're going to see with Obsidian. But if they can squeeze a baseball one in there, it'd be really nice. But in the meantime, for basketball collectors, Obsidian is a solid product. Yeah, not sure what the autos sell for in the secondary market, but $575, a decent chunk of change.
A thing that I like that they do for most, if not all, releases, usually around the date that it releases, they'll have a blog up with some of the highlights as well as a couple of box break. And I mean, these cards are definitely pretty, but not at that price point. for me. Yeah, maybe others. I get it.
Yeah, you just wonder what base is selling on that.
Yeah, that's always the question too, right, Jeff? You see that high price point, it's like, what's it going to cost me? Which leads us into the next one, which is Panini Spectra Baseball, which dropped today as well. It's coming at you $649.95 a box. So if you've got some on there, what's it going to cost you to grab your favorite players? With Panini Spectra Baseball, you're getting 4 packs in a box, 4 cards in a pack. So you'll get 16 cards, 4 autos, 4 mem. So the idea being for $650, maybe all of the value will be wrapped up in that 8, and the other 8 can be sold on the eBay for cheap for those of us team and player collectors that just need our stuff. This is a brand new product for 2021, and there are some ultra rare inserts according to the sell sheet called Deep Space and Solar Eclipse. So check those out. I don't know if there was any on the sell sheet to show us what those look like, but if non-licensed baseball is your thing, check those out. They're probably in line with the downtown Donruss type stuff, the kabooms. They're nice inserts, I'm sure, with them called Deep Space and Solar Eclipse. Obviously, they're going to have some kind of space background of some kind. So on Friday, Bowman Sterling 2021 Bowman Sterling baseball will drop $3.25 a box. You'll get 5 packs in a box with 6 cards, so 30 total. 5 chrome autos in each box. Seems like a decent value if you're a speculative sort, and if you chasing autos, there's a 100 card base set with all new Sterling Recollections inserts. So
found some preview images, at least for Spectra.
Oh God, that's a nice Ricky Anderson. Thanks. So yeah, there. What's that? That's probably going to be the solar
deep
eclipse,
space,
I would imagine.
Eclipse, yeah.
A sharp looking card.
Mm-hmm.
Spectre was another one that, again, with Chronicles, collecting it when there's 11 different designs to collect from. Obsidian and Spectre both stuck out. Spectre was always a little bit of a thicker card.
Yeah.
So hey, check those out. I'm sure the checklist on those 2 short prints will probably only be 10 to 15 subjects long. So shouldn't be too bad, especially if you don't have one on the list. You can enjoy them and not have to worry about buying them.
There are 10 solar eclipse and 25 deep space.
All right, Lord help me if there's an A on there. And then 2021 Topps Gold Label, which had been pushed back, is supposed to be coming out this Friday. 128 bucks, so not too terrible. 7 packs, 5 cards per pack. The on-card framed autos are coming back with 1 guaranteed per box. You will find your Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 as usual. There's a 100-card base set. The parallels include black, blue, all new this year, purple, red, and then the 1-of-1 golds. Blacks are the only non-numbered parallel. And as they go from Class 1, Class 2, and 3, the numbered parallels, for instance, go from 150 to 100 to 50. So they'll progressively get harder and harder as they go lower as far as the serial number.
Makes sense.
Also releasing this. Yeah. They do. Also releasing this week, 2021 Topps Chrome Sapphire MLS. Online exclusive dropped yesterday. 2021 Panini Chronicles Draft Picks Basketball drops today, 9/29, and on Friday the 1st, 2021 Pro Set Metal Football. All schedule release dates are subject to change, but were current as of this morning. MSRP pricing and product details were gathered from blowout cards and are subject to change. Check out Ryan Cracknell's articles on Beckett.com/news for more details on these new releases. What's brewing next week? Not a whole bunch going on. 2021 Panini Donruss Optic Basketball, 2021 Panini Origins Football, 2021 Panini Chronicles UFC are all slated to drop on Wednesday, October 6th. And then on Friday, October 8th, we should have 2021 Topps Triple Threads and 2021 Onyx Vintage Basketball, which I believe we announced was coming out last week. So I believe that got pushed back. So Infill Chatter Hobby Talk. Another sucky way to start Hobby Talk, guys. But our good buddy Jimmy at Kentucky Cards, unfortunately, his LCS got burglarized again. He said in his tweet that the guy didn't get much, thankfully. They did, however, get a great shot of his eyes and upper face on their security camera. So if anyone can help identify this POS, assuming that he hasn't already been identified and caught, prayers with Jimmy. It's unfortunate. We've seen this a couple of times now. What can LCSs do to protect themselves against this type of theft moving forward, since we're starting to see more and more of this? Do you guys have any suggestions and thoughts?
One, it looks like he needs to change his battery since the date says 1970. But he said that he didn't really want to put bars on the window, but it looks like that's the thing that he's going to have to do. The didn't break or shatter, but the door didn't hold, so it looks like the guy tried to just kick it open. And that they're going to adjust accordingly, and it's sad for the area. It looks like they took that's what Donruss Optic 1819 with Luca and 2020 Optic Donruss Football, as well as probably other things as well.
unfortunately, all you can do is raise your insurance policy, and bars on the window, unfortunately, and
It's a shame
maybe
because he had such a nice shop.
Yeah, it's a great shop.
And none of these got none of his display cards, his Zion 1 of 1. That if it's still over there, it's where it was at least when we came through. The actual Kentucky game floor that he has on display, it's for him. I hope that doesn't shy him away from showing off his great collection.
And if you watch the episode that we had him on, probably a year and a half ago now,
it was October-ish of 2019. I can dig up the episode.
Yeah, we need to get him back on the show. Jimmy literally is like the nicest human being in the world. Yeah, great smile, great laugh, great personality, great heart. He's just like, literally, if you went into like the science lab and said, let's just create a great guy, the computer would spit out Jimmy, and it's like nobody deserves this.
Quite literally 99 episodes ago, episode number 71.
Look at you having watched the show yesterday, and it's getting to the point, in my opinion, where you walk past a jewelry store, like in a strip mall, and at night after they're closed, and you see nothing in their showcases. They put everything away. It's getting to that point where everything's got to go into a vault, and hopefully it doesn't come there, but that's where it's heading.
But especially when you're talking about sealed product, right? Because sealed product, it's easy to figure out what to pick. Again, because you know the years, you know the sport, and you know it'll move. And again, the reason why I suspect that nothing was taken from the cases because it would be too easy to track what was taken from the cases if it ever came up for sale. Just like anything of significant value that's easily identifiable. Where
he took Luca's rookies, and he got a product that has some downtown cards in them. Quick flips. You pull a downtown out of there, you're going to get $300, $400, $500. It's unfortunate if you have any, assuming that the guy has not been arrested. We don't know that he has or has not. If you have any tips, the good news is they did get a good view of what his eyes and upper face look like. But anyway, I hate to start a show off like that. I mean, I know we're halfway through the show, but anyway, we're going to do a couple of quick updates on Fanatics. Just real quick, Ivan at Watch the Breaks and Go GTS, of course, had shared an article. I think this one was from Sportico. I think Wall Street Journal had it as well. Trading card division of Fanatics has raised $350 million at a $10.4 billion valuation. This, according to the Sportico article that I couldn't read because it was available only to subs, and screw that noise. I'm not buying your stupid. And I moved on to other things in my head and didn't want to go read it on Wall Street Journal. This is really common in, this is what Fanatics is going to do. This is what companies do. They raise working capital. My question to you, Jeff, what's the play here? Is raising this capital a play to acquire perhaps Topps, Panini, Upper Deck, or is it just to have some working capital? I can't think that this money was raised to just sit in their bank account.
No, I doubt it is. But, again, when I was looking at some of the earlier Bloomberg articles about, them seeking another round, the valuation makes sense for the entire company. It really doesn't make sense for the trading card division itself. Simply because of the fact, again, that, yes, it holds the licenses, for the NBA, NFL, and Major League Baseball, but those licenses aren't realized yet, again, because they haven't printed product and they don't go into effect until 2026. So I think that, the headline is at least somewhat misleading. And I also think that the headline, it also points to the fact that, I think if Fanatics is looking to do one thing other than, again, just acquiring more working capital, because that's what companies like this can do, is they just can go into the open market, raise equity to buy inventory, more than anything else. That what this screams to me is the fact that they're probably looking for more IPs. One of the things that I know that we know, especially in the college sports landscape, is the NLLs have basically changed, the opportunities for memorabilia companies, to actually, produce jerseys and shirtsies and everything else that we know of in professional sports now with the names and numbers of college athletes. But again, those licenses aren't cheap, and there isn't a single clearinghouse for those licenses. So I suspect that some of that $350 million could be going Bryce Young's way, for example. Again, it's a market where they have to acquire IP, and it's not cheap. But they know that they need to acquire the IP to move the product. So I think that's probably what they're looking at least as part of one of their plays. I also know that they have some interest in getting into not necessarily the media rights game, but they are definitely interested in partnering with properties for live events.
Or maybe they just got to set it on the counter in front of Topps and saying, "Listen, your credit rating has been downgraded, and based on your prior valuation of 1.3, you're not anywhere near there. Your confectionery company, or division makes up a percentage of that.
Right.
We're just going to set this $350 million on the counter. You have a very large debt payment due in April of 22, along with the rest being due as of right now in October of 22. If you can't refinance it, we're just going to set this right here on the counter, almost like dangling a bowl of ice cream in front of a kid saying, admit to whatever, or give me the piece of information, that secret you're holding." It just this money is being used soon, whether it's to buy a company or.
It is, but it's a question again. If I know that I have the license in 26, why am I buying out 4 years worth of Topps' license? Where I could acquire the assets in 2025 for much cheaper because they have no value after 25 other than historical value. So that's one thing. The other thing, again, at a 10.4 billion valuation, they can raise around for 350 today. They can go after another 400 in April. So they can get the money whenever they need the money, and they have, the bigger VC partners, SoftBank, Silver Lake, behind them, that they are connected to the people that will find them the cash if the opportunity presents itself. I'm not ruling out the fact that they go ahead and buy Topps. I just don't think it's going to be within the next 12 months. Just because of the fact that Topps is still looking at the market and saying, hey, we can continue to print money for at least a little bit longer.
And I would imagine both Fanatics and Topps want to see what happens to Panini, who are going to be affected as soon as next year. Definitely by 2023. So there's this 18-month window, 15-month window where both Fanatics and Topps might be looking, okay, let's see what the play is with Panini first. We reported last week via Sports Card Radio that folks with Panini at the industry summit were very noticeably upset and concerned. So it might just be, before you and I go out on a date, so to speak, let's see what happens with this one over here.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to the dance together if we need to. So
yeah, I can see Panini folding first just because of the fact that they don't have the league licenses, or at least the MLB league license. And again, it's also the fact that they don't have the IP and the market cachet that Topps does. So if that's the number, and it's not going to be 350, but it's certainly going to be somewhere between 2 and 3 if it goes. Then Topps is going to be some increment above that.
Well, and my thought a couple of months ago, when all this came down the pipeline, the valuation for Topps would be about $400 million if they just sold off the trading card IP and brands. Brian Gray of Leaf at the Content Creators Dinner with Dr. Beckett believes it's considerably more than that. I don't see how they get there, but I want to segue real quick into something that Sue's brought up before we get off the Fanatics topic. She posed a really interesting question. We also had one in the chat. They kind of go line in line.
Before you push in, I have a quick update on Jimmy.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so here's the initial post that we were just sharing. Guy responds, once he lands in jail, he'll be thinking, damn, I should have probably just got a job like a normal human being. Karma's a bitch. Guy replies, 99% chance that they won't catch him. There's no way to tell online what their items. That's wrong. Their items, they still are the right ones. That's why businesses have insurance, I hope, at least. And that was kind of our conclusion. But Jimmy replies, we actually are in the 1%. We will post when we can.
Good.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Good for Jimmy. And I'll reach out, or Steph can reach out to Jimmy soon. Let's see if we can get him back on in November or so, and say hi to him and see how he's doing. So Sue's posed this question. Before we get into the answer, I want to read the question from DR, who had the really good one earlier as well.
Yep, in chat.
Sue's had asked this. Let's say Fanatics brings everything in-house. That includes manufacturing, distribution, grading, storage, similar to ComC, and selling. What happens if this venture fails? Now, before we get into that, DR asks, I feel like most people think the NIL, which stands for name, image, license, market will drive the hobby higher. But what cannibalism risk do you think the NIL could do or have on pro cards? This all kind of is all speculation. We don't know. What are our 60-second thoughts before we move on to the next topic on what happens if Fanatics takes everything in-house and then, whoops, it didn't work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my 60-second is the fact that, again, when you look at who's cashing in the landscape, it is going to be the prize recruits at the institutions with the most reputation. I mean, that's just the nature of popularity and market exposure. But my conclusion on the NILs is the fact that you still have collectors that will not buy cards of players in their college uniforms. You can already buy them. Does it mean that there'll be more of them? Sure, but that isn't going to convince that market that suggests that a player is invaluable until they are in their pro uniform. So I don't know if it's necessarily cannibalism in the market. It probably just leads to more confusion because there just can be more product.
I love Once a Cubs response that will have more McGuire 85, 87 rookie type arguments.
Yep.
Yeah.
85, by the way.
I was going to say something to 87, but I was going to say something to Jeff's point much earlier in the show when we were talking about, agreeing and disagreeing on marketplace and pricing structures and models and distribution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's like this hobby right now, we mentioned last week, is the wild, wild west. We had Nick Duante on, and him being a school teacher, I had said it's like going into a school cafeteria and you have all of these different cliques.
Yep.
You've got the cheerleaders and the athletes and the nerds and the student government and the outcasts and the smokers and so on and so forth. If we're just going off of your typical 1990s high school tropes, but same kind of a thing. It's like literally as a hobby, we can't agree on a player's rookie card. The most simplest thing is, what is a player's rookie card? We can't define that as a hobby. What the hell makes us think that we're going to be able to agree on anything more complex? But my basic response to Sue's was, it will be the end in the self-destruction of the hobby as we know it. Secondary market will continue to exist. I just bought a card today from 1910. You'll always have cards that will circulate, but there won't be any new stuff. I think the true hobbyists will stick around collecting what was already made. Moving forward, of course, the licenses would go back up for grabs. If Topps, Panini are still around, they're welcome to go back. Maybe some athletes get together and create
Players Inc. or something.
Yeah.
Just a brand new. Who knows what that? But it's interesting to kind of speculate. If you're out there listening and you want to hit about the cards up on the good old Twitter, tag Jeff, please, as well, and give your thoughts on that. I know we don't want to try to take over Suze's question. You can always find her at Yanks Chick and comment there as well. Tag us on there. We'd love to hear your thoughts on what would happen if Fanatics does all of this great stuff in theory, and then whoops, the consumer market says not interested.
Well,
so,
I mean, to me, again, the question of a failed Fanatics venture is it's not whether anybody cares. It's whether someone with enough money to care about the problem actually cares. The best analogy I can give is the fact that, what was it? Well, earlier this week, it was announced that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson had bought all the IP of the failed XFL for $15 million. Well, again, $15 million probably isn't much to The Rock, but now he owns the IP of the St. Louis Battlehawks, and pick whatever team. Again, is it worth $15 million? Probably not to the average consumer, but he had the $15 million to spend. He is a former football player, so here you go.
You ever watch News Radio back in the 90s? There's an episode when Jimmy James buys all of the main cast members a brand new car.
Yep.
And he bought like a 6-pack. They're all different colors, except for Matthew. Matthew did not get one. He got a bunch of tapes from an old 1940s comedy show. And everybody thought, well, that kind of sucks, Jimmy. And Matthew throws a fit and kind of, these are my cassette tapes, and you guys get your car, and I just get cassette tapes, and starts to sarcastically laugh. And Jimmy's like, no, I don't think you understand, Matthew. I didn't buy you cassette tapes. I bought the IP. I bought it for you. You now own them. And I think it was a fictitious, old comedy group from, but the whole thing was if a commercial wants to license it, they've got to talk to you. They've got to pay you. I gave you them. Much better than a car. And so who knows if the XFL will matter? Is it $15 million? Does he ever get a return against that? Or does it even matter to him? He owns it. Good for him. My other point I brought up to Suze is if this self-destructs, who cares? We care as collectors. Be different if Bounty bought up all of the toilet paper license and they're the only ones that can make toilet paper, and then they decided, or it blew up in their face and now nobody gets toilet paper anymore. People would people would care. Yeah. Everybody would care universally, worldwide. Here it's just a finite amount of collectors that would be concerned and not in a financial position to do a damn thing about it. Yeah. So,
and I guess my other thought is, if Fanatics fails, I'm sure Gary V will be very interested, because I think the NFT market becomes a lot more interesting. Not that I really care or have anything to say or have any exposure into it, but I could see that as the next evolution. Just go completely digital with the product.
It's possible, and it's going to take a lot of. Better hope that this new wave sticks around, because the old guard is gone. At least as far as new products go. Yeah. We'll still collect what we had before and just cycle that around and again, philosophically speaking, we don't own anything. We're all going to die someday, and we're just caretakers. So in the meantime, we'll just trade it around, like trading our lunches at in the cafeteria at recess. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this subject, but we just had a couple more funny ones. More from the Hardy Boys case files of just buy the card via Mike Rugg. The real Mike Rugg had tweeted out, we spoke about this last week, about the guy, or the week before, about buying a whole case to get a single downtown card. Mike opened up 35 plus blasters to pull this Barry Sanders downtown, in which he said he would sell for $300. Do some simple math. 35 blasters at a $19.99 retail or $21.64 at a reasonable tax comes out to $757.40. $757.40. Newsflash is more than $300. So when I quote tweeted this, he responded saying, "I didn't pay a dime for these, guy." Like, well, good for you. If you didn't pay for them, somebody did. Otherwise, you're openly admitting to theft. I don't know how he acquired them. That's none of my business, of course. The optics are what they are. You open up roughly $700 to $800 worth, and that's at $20, not 30 or 40 or whatever it might be, buying them directly from Target.com.
Mhm.
This was just at the old $20 price point.
Mhm.
So, and that's what I told him. I was like, if you didn't buy them, somebody did.
Right.
And more people in the thread came up empty. Steph, I don't know if you want to share these. I did keep the tweets, but Canz Cards, CANZ_cards, said he went 0 for 15.
Mhm.
The Real Script said he had an empty case of, opened up a case of blasters and came up empty on downtowns.
Mhm.
And then at Giant Ginger Game finally hit 1 after 30 blasters.
Mhm.
Listen, PSA, just buy the damn card. They're in the old movie American Dream, the Michael Jackson story, the Jackson 5 story. Michael was 5 and Joe couldn't find him. His dad, Joe, couldn't find him for a rehearsal, and he goes and chases him. Michael runs right into his arms. He goes, "Where were you at?" And Michael's like, "I was at the candy store." He goes, "What? You spend all your money on this damn candy." He goes, "What were you going to do with it?" He goes, "I'm going to sell it." He goes, "You're going to sell the candy?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "How much did you pay for it?" He goes, "A nickel." He goes, "And how much are you going to sell it for?" And Michael says, "A nickel." And Joe says, "Boy, you better stick to singing." Every time I'm on the Twitter, every day, I think of that because somebody does something where it's just like, you're buying it for a nickel, you're selling it for a nickel. But in this case, you're selling it for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. And you're selling it for 10%, 20%, 30% of that. The negative return value is already got to be negative 50 to 70% on a blaster. And then you open up times 35 to pull a card that you're going to sell for. Anyway.
Nothing against downtowns, but for the same cost as one currently,
Yeah.
you could have a buttonhole Jackie Robinson.
Mhm.
Of Jackie Robinson.
Mhm.
A beautiful relic of maybe the most, outside of Babe Ruth, the most well-known and popular, recognizable name. A guy who literally transcends sports in general. Or you can have a Justin Fields or Barry Sanders downtown. Hey, your money, to each is your own. Not here to tell you how to spend your money. Just buy the card is all.
Well,
if you want it that bad.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
and to my point on the Sanders, you could also buy how many 1989 score rookies?
Yeah, downtowns are great. Downtowns would be a beautiful set to have if they were, $30-$40 each.
Right.
So check this. This was awesome, and this goes back to the whole collation issues we've talked about before. We see all the time. Double Super via Cross Viper Cards opened up his first box of finest flashbacks, and he pulled 2 Superfractors and an auto. He pulled a Freddie Freeman auto, and the Superfractors were of Tyler Glasnow and Corey Seager. And then that one, if you're watching it, that Tony Gwynn is also a short print.
Mm-hmm.
So he opened up a box, gets an auto, 2 supers, and a short print.
Thanks, Tops.
So, yeah. Smoke them if you got them.
Uh-huh.
Speaking of ridiculous, let's open something. This came via Ryan's Cards. I think he has 2 S's in there, LLC.
Mm-hmm.
Best Bowman Chrome case ever, perhaps. Luft Brothers Trading posted on their Instagram an insane case of 2021 Bowman Chrome.
How?
Case included over 140 colored parallels. The case included a super auto of Franiel Baez of the Diamondbacks and 2 additional colored autos if the rest wasn't enough. Steph, at the bottom of that, I didn't add it to the show notes on Luft case. It says at the very bottom, they compared this particular one to another case that they opened.
Sure, I can read through it here. In case you missed the live, here's the look at the best 2021 Bowman. 140 color refractors, 1 hobby case, 12 boxes. Put that in perspective, we ripped another hobby case today, and it had 39 color wrapped. So this one had more than triple the color, including some monster autos, a super, and a true blue J-Rod. This doesn't show up on our hot hand with Bowman. I don't know what will. And so it certainly shows that they got the luckiest of the luckiest boxes with two colored autos, Luis Rodriguez and Miguel Blais, however you pronounce that, sorry, as well as the Franiel Baez super auto, and a ton
of color.
Ton of color. I mean, blue, orange, aqua, green, gold, yellow, pink, red. Maybe?
I mean, you want to talk about return on investment.
Yeah.
If he had this just for himself, I mean, what a great case. So congrats to him. Sucks to be the guy who gets none in his case. But all right, so this was kind of interesting. Drew at Drew Cards _ the underscore is at the very end of cards. Drew Cards _ had said something about, remember that time when I was the hot topic of the hobby for a few hours? And so I had to go figure out what he was talking about. So would you tell on yourself? Drew's website had an old coupon for 50% off of singles. Someone found and was able to use this and apply that coupon to buy a ton of Bowman Draft hobby boxes. Apparently, the e-commerce site that he used erroneously miscategorized the sealed boxes, allowing the buyer to apply the coupon to the wrong items. Drew did not honor the sale per the coupon's wording and took to Twitter to explain what happened, right? Hey, this is what happened. One of you guys tried to get a good deal. Sorry. The responses were a mixed bag, both defending Drew as a small business owner as well as the buyer who tried to capitalize. Basically, some are saying, Drew, good for you. That's not what the coupon was for. The others were like, dude, you should have honored it. It's your coupon. My thought is, keep that to yourself. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts? Would you tell on yourself?
No, and I mean, that's actually what someone asked. Why advertise this mistake? Seems like it would bring on more negativity. I mean, hopefully this guy went through and deactivated every coupon, not coupon,
right?
That he has on his website. But no, I mean, I would at least want to get out in front of the other person saying, well, don't go shop with this guy because he's a scammer. He won't honor his deals. Well, at that point, you can't explain. Well, what happened was, so I get that. Ben was, yes. But you know, at the same time, personally, if I were in this position, no, I wouldn't honor it. I'm sorry. In good faith, that's not why you tried to do that. I mean, I get if you want to go on Google and type in Pizza Hut gift codes to get 5% off your pizza or what have you. It's slightly different. But you know, I can't take a gift card that says free pizzas for life if you scratch it by January 4th, 1994, scratch it today and expect to get it.
Well, and I'm also looking at it, you know, again,
maybe he discounts him one box.
Probably, yeah, that's probably fair. But I mean, to my, you know, from my perspective, I'd want to know exactly how the coupon read.
Sure.
Right, because he can go and say this is, you know, for 50% off of raw singles without telling us whether anyone else actually used that code to get a discount on raw singles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this may very well have been the first person that tried to use the code. So, you know, again, it's not a question of pointing out that this was, you know, because, you know, part of me is thinking, well, I'm going to have to go check, you know, what Drew's Black Friday specials are, because if he's given me 50% off of raw singles in the past, you know, the discount's going to have to be much better this year after this. But if I don't know if anyone actually used the coupon for anything other than this, you know, to me, again, it's just the fact of, you know, actually check your platform before you apply coupon codes and, you know, go through the inventory and see what it applies to and doesn't before you actually activate it.
Yeah, lesson to be learned here. I don't know that I would have told on myself in a public forum. Maybe put a disclaimer on my website or something. He opened himself up, even though I think his heart was in the right place. He also was, his first tweet had said something to the effect of, well, one of you guys really, or which one of you guys got a really good deal and bought all these boxes for 50% off. And it's like, as a small business owner, I've owned a small business before. I had an issue with coupons in person where people tried to use them. So I said coupons. That's how they
You
are.
said coupons. They're not Q-tips.
I'm about to smack a dude tonight. Just because you got a new haircut doesn't mean you can be all high and mighty on us.
We all Midwesterners.
Yeah, but I had an issue, 20 plus years ago with people trying to redeem coupons that we had sent out and shared with local businesses to generate business and really get our name out there. And, we had to honor some and not others. And it was, a big mess. But again, if he would have handled this a little different in that initial, hey, there was a mix up on my website. There was an issue with the e-commerce platform that did this. I think it would have been more well received is all. I don't think anybody was trying to. It was interesting reading through the comments. So if you want to go try to track that tweet down, you're welcome to. It's just I don't know that I would have at least presented it that way, but that's just me. I would have been a little bit more tactful and not try to come across as humorous since I'm standing in front of my business and you're talking, everybody is a potential customer. So there was an interesting tweet by Ryan Cracknell talking about underrepresentation. He tweeted out 108 copies exist of the Keith Shore Project 2020 Ken Griffey Jr. for every one Justin Tucker rookie card, that being the base, not the subsequent parallels. Why are players like this so severely underrated and underproduced? Of course, there was no way to know at the time that Justin Tucker was going to be a Hall of Fame kicker, perhaps the best kicker of all time.
66
short argument. Yeah, just broke the record.
Yep.
Short argument is he's got to be a top 3 kicker of all time if you want to argue for one of the Anderson brothers or Vinatieri.
Now you should get. Now you're getting kicked.
Yeah.
So
why you got to bring Gary Anderson into this?
So obviously we know the whole football thing that quarterbacks are the first thing you collect, the second thing you collect, and the 50th thing you collect. What other positions in professional sports are underrepresented? I listed a couple off the top of my head. Steph, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I had wrote down NHL defensemen, NFL special teamers, NFL offensive linemen and kickers, Major League Baseball relief pitchers, head coaches.
I'll argue that as they seem to be in every box that I ever open up Topps Chrome, that really pitchers are too oversaturated. But that's just me.
Head coaches and managers, and then Steph, you added world champions. I'm assuming you meant like the world champion.
Yep.
Team card.
Team card, whatnot. It's card number 1. What should be card number 1?
Yeah.
No. If you want a truly underrepresented position, NFL long snapper.
That's because there's that one dude named Loeffler in there, right?
No, hear me out. Hardly, if ever, do they get a card.
Right.
They usually play a long time, and they're the only position that actually doesn't get represented in Madden. They don't actually have long snappers. It's just some random player that they assign to the long snapper spot.
Yeah, it's an interesting,
but
Justin
that's
Tucker,
like saying I'm a player too.
Yeah,
Tucker's the outlier. I'm sure there are plenty of other Hall of Famers at some of the positions.
And mascots.
This was the beauty of Topps Total that we saw in baseball the last few years being brought back. That a lot of these players that don't typically get cards, all of a sudden, why do we need 150, to use a player on the A's, 150 Matt Chapman cards a year when we're not getting any, say, Lou Trevino's or hardly any Jake Diekmans or Liam Hendricks. And it, again, I selected just a handful of different positions. We need to see more of that. It'd be nice to see more. But again, if we're just a hobby built around speculation and profits, then who the hell wants a long snapper? Who Wants a Justin Tucker?
A 10-card base set each year with the top 10 players and call it a day.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's just us being picky. It was just kind of funny because he used the Griffey Shore as his comparison, and to say that there are 108 copies per was funny. So
it's funny, but it's probably not the best example either, because you have one of the most iconic images of a baseball card from the last 25 years as interpreted by one of probably the better known, least popular artists in the Topps lineup right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Kind of funny. So
yeah.
Speaking of underrepresentation,
bring back Topps total.
Upper Deck is kind of doing something cool. Steph, if you want to pull up that tweet and read through it, I didn't add to the show notes. This is kind of interesting.
So at Upper Deck Hockey, official checkmark blue. Upper Deck is looking for licensed images of Indigenous players for an upcoming NHL promotional set. If you have imagery for these players, please DM us. And they mentioned Sylvain Cloutier of the Blackhawks, James Jamieson of the Rangers, Henry Elmer Buddy Miracle. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Rangers, and James Simon of the Coyotes. Jason Simon of the Coyotes.
Are these current players?
I'd have to assume so, because if you're looking at the history of Indigenous players in the NHL, they go far back, and it's a far more extensive list than this.
Born 1974, so recent, if not current.
Recent, but probably ones which
born 19
players that have never had cards before.
Yeah, if they're asking for images, I imagine there's probably not a lot out there.
No,
born 1922.
Maybe for very long.
Yeah, so they're definitely compiling a set, and this is their gaps.
And 1904.
So we got some way back guys. Jameson, you said it was 1922.
Yep.
And played between 94 and 96. So too recent, too old.
Interesting. So
so players that never had cards, and players that played before there were cards.
Yeah, so we don't have any other information on this other than it's promotional, and it should be coming soon once Upper Deck gets an opportunity to compile the images. Definitely looking forward to that. I know that we've spoken to the team over at Upper Deck, and they said Chris Carlin is willing to come on again as soon as we can coordinate a time. I think we've had him on twice now, and every time was a blast. So we'll see. Yeah,
and reply to them, the township of North Dumfries. Tried to send a DM, but Twitter told me your account can't receive them. Please contact us for further information on how to obtain a photo of Buddy Miracle.
Cool.
Awesome. Check that out.
So 104 down.
So yeah, maybe we can get Chris or another member of his team on the show, depending on how long it takes. If we can find out a release date or a potential release date, maybe we can get somebody on either right before the release or right after to discuss this, because it's a lot of us have different cultural backgrounds, American Indian in our lineage somewhere, maybe multiple generations back in our family trees, but it's fun to see something
or
different.
Someone who does.
Yeah, absolutely.
I personally, I don't believe we do. I kind of run the family tree, but Angela does. So
yeah, we've got Cherokee in our family line on my mother's side, probably 2 generations above my mom. So I think a lot of folks do, and at the very least, even if you don't personally and you don't know anybody personally, it's really fun to see Upper Deck trying to honor an underrepresented portion of of the hockey history. And so before we wrap up, we've got the shit you see on the shit you see on the good old eBay and Facebook. This one cracked me up. When buying a card, do you consider what the player's mom looks like before buying? This seller said this is a hot player, Zach Wilson, with a hot mom. First off, it's not hot. as far as being a hot player. He's got like 17 interceptions in the first 3 games, and he can't complete a forward pass. Okay. Whether he has a hot mom is subjective, but what a sales tactic, man. Dude, hot player with a hot mom. If you like his mom, you should see his aunt. So I thought that was kind of fun. Some of the stuff you see with descriptions, but, to pull out the guy's mom. It's like, now I'm going to have to go Google all of my favorite A's players' moms to see whether or not they're worth PCing.
So we've now advanced beyond wives and girlfriends into actual bio. Yeah.
Refers further back to that song that I played before the show started, and how it lasts.
You're getting old, Jeff, because I think we're about the same age when. And hey, happy birthday, Steph! I know he had a birthday this past Monday. We sang to him last week.
Yeah, happy birthday.
He turned the good old 34. So us older guys,
I am
you're
years old. Indeed.
You're getting old when you go from, man, that player's got a hot girlfriend or wife, to literally, man, Zach Wilson's mom is hot, because Zach's early 20s, and so therefore mom is probably our age in her early to mid 40s, and so that's how you're one reason you're getting old.
Yeah, when you get to the point in life where you realize that when Bartolo Colon finally was out of Major League Baseball, that there are no more Major League Baseball active major leaguers younger than I am. And then you further realize that, for most draft picks, at least over the last 5 years, solidly, I'm comfortably of an age where I could have been their fathers.
Yeah. Oh, I work next to a young lady who's 24, and I had made a joke the other day to our HR manager, and I was like, I'm old enough to be her dad. And she's like, no, you're not. I was like, hey, I would have been a young dad. I would have been 18. But technically, from a functionality standpoint, I am literally old enough to be her dad. And you start to think that way. And I talk to a gentleman on Twitter through the DMs all the time. And, he's considerably older, retired Wall Street guy, and likes the economics. I have no idea why he follows me. He never tweets anything out personally. He just DMs me. It's like literally he has Twitter to DM me cool baseball stuff. Love the guy. But I was talking to him one time. I'm like, growing up, the old timers games were all, I think one of my first old timers games was Raleigh Fingers coming back 5, 6, 7 years after retirement, late 80s. And I'm like, if they did an old timers game now, do you know which players would be playing? And I don't want to name names because it would be guys, when you're going out there and you're seeing Pedro Martinez and the Jeff Bagwells of the world, it's not even like the 80s guys, right?
No.
The old timers games now, Mike Piazza starting at catcher, and it's like, you know what? Enough. Just stop. So,
for what it's worth, she was born in 73.
See, so she's only 6 years older than me, 48 years old. See, you don't. It's the downfall of getting old. So, Steph, I think we'll push our evergreen topics for another day since we're at 2 hours. We do have a couple of shout outs. They are both related. First off, we want to throw another weekly shout out till he's done running his sale. Our good buddy Brian Bice at Bice Music. You can find him on Sportlots at Brian B03. He's running a promotion through October 30th, raising money for his daughter at Carmen Fund. His daughter did pass away, I believe, 2 years ago from hydrocephalus, and so all profits will go towards that. And then another good friend of the show, Anthony Corona. You can find him on Twitter at Anthony's with an S, Anthony's Corona. He's running a promotion on his timeline right now for Brian. Basically, I talked to him yesterday. He said this is how it's going to work. He's running a sale on his Twitter timeline. A lot of it's just low-end stuff to help raise money for the Bice family and Carmen Fund. If you buy something from Anthony, you can send the money directly to Brian and take a screenshot basically saying, I'm claiming the following 3 cards. The total's $10. Sent the $10 to Brian. You send that screenshot over to Anthony, and then, obviously you got to give him your address. and he'll ship you the cards. So he's going to go ahead and assume, the cost of postage. These cards will go PWE, so understand that before you purchase. The idea being he's just trying to liquidate some of his excess inventory as well as donate to a good cause. You're always welcome to pay it to Anthony as well, and Anthony can forward it to the Bice family. But he reached out and asked if About the Cards would promote that and make people aware. And of course, Brian it was one of our first listeners in the good old days, and was a big supporter of trying to get our name out there when Steph, Tim, and I first began. And he has just a great family, and his daughter was really an angel. And so if you can support either Brian or Anthony or both, all of those proceeds are going to a phenomenal cause. And if we can get some headway next year, we'll promote the heck out of it next year as well. So reach out to Anthony S. Corona on Twitter. And if he's got something you want, make some purchases. You can always reach out to @BiceMusic or @Carmen Fund as well on Twitter. I'm sure they can set up a way for you to make direct donations if you don't want to buy cards, but you're willing to $5, skip a cup of coffee, $10, $50, whatever you comfortably can afford, going to a great cause. So, and then I recently picked up a collection of cards this week, really just because I wanted the binders and the pages. I met with a local gentleman named Zach Reyes, and I'm not taking the cards out of the pages. I reached out to Brian and said, hey, Brian, once I pull all of these cards out of the pages, do you want them? Obviously, they're junk wax era. A few people wanted some stuff out of it, but I said, if you want to take the majority of this inventory off my hands and list it on Sport Lots or eBay or wherever, you might, consider that a donation on behalf of Steph and I. You're welcome to have 100% of the inventory outside of, I guess not 100% then, right? Like 96%. Outside of a couple cards here and there that some of our friends of the show have asked for. So if you want to make any donations, whether it be card-wise or try to set something up like Anthony, I'm sure the Bice family would be more than willing to figure something out, how we can come together as a community to help his daughter's fund, because to say it's going to a good cause is definitely an understatement.
Indeed.
So any final thoughts, either of you gentlemen, before we head out this evening?
I got nothing.
I'm good. As always, collect what you love.
There it is, man. So remember, we are live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific.
Do you want to say it?
10 Central.
No. I gave him a chance. 10 Central.
On YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and review our show on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at About the Cards. You can follow Steph at Junkwax Twins. You can follow me at Our Trading Cards. Jeff, where can we find you?
At Jeff_Soxy, SACHSE.
All right. And is Twitter the only place we can find you?
You can also find me at various other places. You just might have to look a bit harder.
All right, sounds good. It would be like a treasure hunt. Like where's Jeffo? Like a Waldo type search.
Well,
also,
you can always find me on Facebook, but I'm one of about 8 Jeff Soxies in Wisconsin. So good luck.
So also, Steph and I now have a Facebook page to buy, sell, trade, discuss, and debate. So if you're on Facebook and you want to join that, you're more than welcome to hop in there. We would love to have you as part of that community. There are a lot of great people that have already joined. Some great names in the hobby are part of that community. It's small, but hey, we'll get there.
Got to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's cutting out, but what he meant to say was, everybody have a great night, and we'll see you next week.